I just don't understand the psychology behind, okay, if people want to look thinner, they want a little more of a snatch this thing, they want to lose a little of the belly, but then it starts going in such an obvious other direction. You see them and you're like, what is happening to you?
Guys, we need to talk about muscle loss.
One of the biggest mistakes I see being made by people who seek to take control of their blood sugar and energy is that they lose muscle while at it. My name is Dr. Andrew Etuket, and I run a health coaching program called Vigorized. Vigorized is a doctor-led health coaching system that helps high-level professionals take control of their blood sugar and energy without having to rely on medication. The first thing which we should discuss is, how do you know that you're actually losing muscle? Well, the first thing which you could do is do your body composition assessment. Determine the relative amounts of your fat mass to your muscle mass. This is best done by what is called a DEXA scan, but that isn't readily available, at least here in Kampala. The next best thing I would argue is what is called bioelectrical impedance analysis, BIA. Basically, a small amount of electric current is passed through your body, and that can help determine the relative amounts of these tissues, the muscle, the fat, and more importantly, the visceral fat levels. However, if you don't have access to any of these, you shouldn't worry. A very simple way you can determine whether you're actually losing muscle is just look at yourself in the mirror or listen to what people tell you. If you or other people notice that as you're losing weight, you tend to be getting thinner, and particularly at the upper arms, you notice that your eyes are getting sunken. Okay, so I need to get rid of these glasses. You may notice that around your eyes, the bones are becoming more prominent. Or you may also notice that the bones of your face, particularly bones of this region, are more prominent. It's most likely because you're losing muscle. Something else which happens when people do the wrong things and start losing muscle mass, they may find that instead of their bellies shrinking, they're actually bulging. And this is common, especially in the men and women in their postmenopausal years. This is because they are storing visceral fat. Different from the fat which is stored under the skin, subcutaneous fat, visceral fat is stored deep within, around the intestines, and it puts one at risk of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance results in type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol levels, and a bunch of other problems. So why is losing muscle harmful? Muscle is important for strength. Would it be wrong to say that most of us would like to live long, but not have to depend on a walking stick, not have to be frail and need others to carry us around, use a wheelchair and that kind of thing? I don't think it is. In order to do that, you need to have optimal muscle mass and strong bones, what is called the skeletal muscular system. Skeletal, bones, muscular, muscles. They work together. Unfortunately, from the late 30s onwards, we progressively start losing muscle. This is worse in the 50s, 60s, and onwards. 2. Muscle is also important for aesthetic and confidence. Would it be ridiculous to say that no one wants to walk around looking thin and then having their eyes sunken and then having their bones becoming more prominent? I don't think so. Many of the people we work with are executives, managers, and high-level professionals. And one common thing which I hear from them is that the way they perceive that they look affects how they show up in front of their juniors, during board meetings, and during other social obligations. One particular gentleman I spoke with about a year ago recounted a very embarrassing experience. He was standing at a podium, speaking before donors, but he couldn't help but think about how he looked. His belly was bulging, the clothes were not fitting. He started sweating profusely before them. It was so bad that one of the donors asked a member of his team during the break if he was fine. He actually recommended that he goes to a health facility for a checkup. He had no doubts in his ability in the work which he does, but his physical appearance said otherwise. 3. Muscle is important for long-term fat loss. One thing I constantly share with my clients is that if you want to lose the weight and keep it off, you have to make sure that you are at the bare minimum maintaining the amount of muscle mass which you have. As long as you are losing muscle, the fat is going to come back. It's just a matter of time. It may take weeks, it may take months, it may take years. Rebound weight gain will most surely happen. And 4, muscle is absolutely essential for sustainable regulation of one's blood sugar. In healthy individuals, muscle can absorb up to 80% of the glucose in your blood. It logically follows that if your muscle is absorbing glucose, your blood sugar is dropping. And I guess that's what we all want. So there are three things which we guide people in to ensure that they lose fat sustainably, take control of their blood sugar, and master peak energy levels. These three things are nutrition, exercise, and recovery. So let's start with nutrition, which is the most important. When it comes to nutrition, the mistake many people make is eating too little. So let's just make nutrition. Let's just mark it like that. So eating too little. Eating too little is going to stress your body. And this is a unique kind of stress. It's called physiological stress. When your body becomes physiologically stressed, you are going to start producing higher amounts of cortisol, because cortisol is the hormone which helps your body modulate that process of stress. Cortisol is going to cause muscle loss. And when you lose muscle, your cells start becoming resistant to insulin. So muscle loss causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a tree, but it has many fruits of different sizes, but from the same tree. High blood pressure, high blood sugar, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, and several other things. So this leads us to a question. What are the different forms of eating too little? Eating little can occur in several ways. The first way is skipping meals. Now, you may say, oh, but doctor, I thought that in order to lose weight, I need to start eating less. Yes, if you're the kind of person who's been eating lots of food, so you have your normal meals, breakfast, lunch, supper, then you're snacking in between, you're eating lots of junk food, which tends to be high in calories. Yes, reducing the amount of food you eat is going to result in you losing weight initially. But most of the people who I've worked with get to the point where they have already tried to deprive themselves of calories. They lose weight in many cases, but they find themselves hitting a ceiling, hitting a plateau, and they cannot get over that. Now, those are the kind of people who tend to come in to help them lose fat and then take control of their blood sugar. If you're the kind of person who has gotten to this state, I mean, you first tried skipping meals, doing extreme fasting, so that's actually another point, but then you've hit that plateau, reducing the amount of food you're eating is not going to help you. You're actually going to start gaining weight. When my team and I work with people, we teach them how to eat the right amount and then the right quality of food. Regarding quantity of food, we teach them to get a visual appreciation of what their food portions look like. And this is personalized. So what works for A may not necessarily work for B. Also, all of this is done without having to bother themselves with weighing scales and that kind of thing. The other way people eat little food is by doing things like juicing. It's basically founded on fruits, vegetables, and particularly blends of them. So you're taking these blends and these juices and you're having them instead of many of your meals. These juices and these vegetables are very low in calories. And again, having done this for now close to a decade, I know that there is no way you're going to meet your calorie demands by taking juices and taking these vegetables. I constantly teach people that calories are not bad. We need to stop demonizing them. Eat less calories, burn more calories. The calories are required for energy. I like using the analogy. If you don't put oil into the engine of your car, is that engine going to function? It may function for a while, but you're going to progressively stress it and you may get an engine knock. It's the same thing with your body. Your body needs calories to function. So stop depriving it of those calories. Just get them from the right food. Another way people eat too little is as a result of illness. So if you have an illness which is causing you to vomit, so which means even if you eat, the food is coming out, or to have diarrhea. If you eat, the food goes into your stomach, yes, but it's not digested well because it flows very quickly through your intestines and out, and therefore little of that food is absorbed. It's basically like you're not eating enough. So in times of illnesses which are associated with vomiting and diarrhea, you may find yourself losing muscle mass. Another way people eat too little is as a result of certain drugs. And the first group of drugs, particularly related to what we're discussing, is certain type 2 diabetes drugs. And the other group of drugs, which I guess I've put alone, but could fall also under type 2 diabetes drugs, is the GLP-1 receptor agonists. I put them separate because they are very popular today for weight loss. So drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, those are the typical brand names of these drugs. If you're to make it more academic, the generic drugs are semaglutide and tirzepatide. So those are the drugs which are covered in those brands. The most common mechanism that these drugs use to make people eat little is by suppressing their hunger. And yet, the more weight you have, the more calories you need to consume to maintain your body weight and your body function. The analogy I commonly use with my clients is compare a 1000cc engine, so say a Toyota Vitz, and then compare that to say a Land Cruiser VX, say 4000cc. Which of these cars is going to need more fuel in its engine? The 1000cc or the 4000cc? It's the 4000cc. So the more weight you have on your body, you need more calories to maintain your function because you have more cells, you have bigger cells. The last thing we'll discuss today that makes people eat too little is bariatric surgery. Again, this is something which is very common today, especially amongst people who want to lose weight. Bariatric surgery consists of several weight loss procedures in which part of the stomach is removed either physically or functionally. So physical removal of the stomach would be things like the gastric sleeve. You're removing about 60% of the stomach. Functionally would be things like the gastric balloon or the gastric band. So the stomach remains there, but you're reducing on the effective size of the stomach available to take in food contents. In both cases, the stomach fills up quicker, you become satisfied quicker, and therefore you eat less amounts of food. In certain other bariatric surgery procedures, like the gastric bypass, the food goes very quickly through the intestinal tract, and therefore less is absorbed. So you're also eating less in some way. Okay, so moving on, let's look at recovery. Recovery is the second step in our three-step system, the diabetes freedom formula. Again, just like with nutrition, we look at quality and quantity. So when it comes to quantity, you want to strive to have at least 7.5 hours. And then when it comes to quality, you want that sleep to be deep sleep. So you want it to be uninterrupted. So sleeping from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., those are 7 hours, is not the same as you sleeping from 10 a.m. but waking up at 2 a.m. and then going back to bed, say at 2:30, and then sleeping up to 5 a.m. It's different. This is interrupted sleep, and then this is uninterrupted sleep. And then, of course, there are certain other things like looking at screens before bed. So looking at your laptop, looking at your phone, looking at TVs, especially if you're not using the eye shield function on those devices. And certain other things can diminish the quality of sleep that you have. Poor sleep is going to worsen stress levels. And high stress levels are associated with high cortisol levels. High cortisol is going to cause muscle loss. And then muscle loss is going to result in insulin resistance and then the diseases, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, dyslipidemia, and so on. High cortisol levels are also going to cause poor sleep. Therefore, high stress is going to worsen sleep, and poor sleep is going to worsen stress. It's a vicious cycle. All right, so let's move on to the last part of our three-step system, which is the exercise. When it comes to exercise, the most common mistake people make is they do too much cardio. So cardio is basically that exercise which gets people breathless. So you're breathing heavily, and it's normally associated with also sweating a lot. So it's things like running, it's things like jogging, brisk walking, running on the treadmill, dancing, all these Zumba and so on, cycling, swimming. Doing too much cardio or long duration cardio would be defined as having a cardio session which lasts 60 minutes or more. Actually, for my clients, I tend to actually bring them down to 30 minutes. Like you really only need 30 minutes of cardio, maybe once, twice, or thrice a week at most, as long as you're lifting weight. The other way someone can be doing the wrong exercise is by them lifting too much. So too much lifting. So lifting too much could be in two ways. So the first way it could be in is if somebody is lifting weights which are heavier than for their fitness level at the time. That's too intense. However, there could also be a scenario where the person is lifting the right weight, but then they are lifting, say, 5-6 times a week. So they only have one rest day. Those two kinds of ways of doing exercise are going to cause stress. So this is not going to be necessarily physiological stress. This can even be also physical stress. You see, muscle grows in a very interesting way. If I just make this some kind of graph, during exercise, as you lift the weight and as the muscle stretches, it's actually getting damaged. So think of negative gains. But when you rest well, when you sleep long hours, eat the right kind of food, drink lots of water, which helps your metabolism, it begins to build back. And it's going to build back. If I had some line, you're going to see that it builds back bigger and stronger. Yeah, it's not that you're building muscle in the gym. No, you're actually breaking it down. But then you build it outside by what you eat and then by recovering well. So you should make sure that you're lifting at a rate and at an intensity which enables you to recover. And then the other mistake people make with exercise is they just don't lift. If you don't lift, you're going to lose muscle because the only way muscle grows is by you stretching it. Everyone should be lifting. I wish I knew this earlier. From my teens, I would have been lifting. So I'll say this once again. The consequences then of losing muscle are going to be that you're losing strength, you're not looking good, you're not confident, you lose control of your blood sugar, and then you're predisposed to rebound weight gain. So even if you lose fat, because you're losing muscle, which is basically your engine, you are going to put on that weight on the long term. Awesome. In the next video, we'll be discussing more about the GLP-1 agonists, of which the most common is Ozempic. So while you wait for that video, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you don't miss out when we post that video. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and I'll speak to you soon.